right, welcome to the May 27th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm glad to be back at the podium after 2 weeks away due to hip replacement surgery. We're glad to be at the Wakanda Club with all of those of you here in person today and those of you out watching our live streaming or later on our YouTube channel. Thanks to Invictus Media for live streaming our meeting today. And now, David Oman will give us a moment of inspiration with his great journalistic voice, and then will lead us in the pledge and the four-way test.
Thank you, President Doug. Doug just shared with me a moment ago that his doctor and he met yesterday, and the doctor gave him a clean bill of health and said he's got the body of a 95-year-old man. Can't make it up. I'm going to be very brief since Doug already mentioned his health issue. Some of you may know that we are next door neighbors. And so for the last 2 weeks, we've spent some time together. I've been in his home a couple times, so I'm walking on the sidewalks, loitering in my driveway. Every time we've interacted in the last 2 weeks, he has not lost the aura of a Rotary Club president. Every time we've met, outside, inside, he said, "David, remain standing and recite the four-way test." What a man. All right. My inspiration today comes from our oldest, and we were talking at this table a moment ago, I think our most beloved member, Neil Smith. Neil turned 100 last March of 20. That was our last full meeting before the pandemic. In early April, I realized Neil's still around. So I called him and said, "Happy 101st." And we've had 3 or 4 conversations since. He misses this club. And he said to me in our last call about 10 days ago, "I get to see all the good people from around town when I come to Rotary." So that Rotary is inspiring him, and that observation from Neil, I think, inspires all of us. And I've said, "Neil, when they let you out of Scottish Rite, we'll bring you back." And I think that'll be one great day for our club. Now, let's do the over here, we'll do the pledge. Turn to the right, we'll do the pledge first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. And as I've said before, you have such a great voice and a great face for radio. We're pleased to have over 45 of you here in attendance with us today, and a couple prospective members as well have joined us. Even with me being president, we still have people that want to be part of this club. Hard to believe. Welcome to all of you. We'd like to wish Bill Northey a happy birthday today. Don't think he's here, so he's probably out partying hard somewhere. Our next Rotary volunteer opportunity will be Meals for the Market with DMARC. As many of you heard his presentation to our club earlier this year, This is an organization led by our own Matt Unger. We will need 8 to 10 volunteers on Saturday, June 26th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the downtown farmers market. Volunteers will take tote bins around the market at closing to collect donations and discuss demarc with vendors. This should be a great outdoor and socially distant opportunity addressing our food insecurity in our community. Please contact Jason Savescent for further details. There's some flyers on the table and in the lobby for contact information. A reminder for those, and Kitty, who have and use Club Runner on your smartphone, you do need to refresh the app once in a while. Excuse me. You need to refresh the app once in a while for it to update and changes like showing new members to appear. This slide shows you the icon that you need to click to refresh your app. But I think even a civil engineer could understand that. A reminder, oops, I got ahead a little bit. 2 weeks gone and I'm losing it all. I'd like to invite Judy McCoy Davis to the podium to introduce our own one of. What have I done? I thought I was off medication. Aha, I see it now. For you prospective members, I don't have that much longer here, so it's only going to get better in a few weeks. Whew. Speaking of new members, June is our membership month. Well, actually, every month is membership month, but we're doing an extra push in June. You should have received an email on Monday with a reminder and materials that you can share with prospective members. There is also the information at the welcome table in the lobby. Now, I would like to invite Judy McCoy Davis to introduce one of our own members and keynote speaker for today's meeting. We have not officially introduced Helen to our membership, so Judy gets to do double duty with this introduction. But first, a reminder, when it's time for questions for our speaker, to please come up to the front, or Kitty will hand you a microphone dripping with magical disinfectant juice for you to hold. State your name for our live stream guests, and then ask your question. And be sure to hold the microphone directly in front of you so our live stream guests can hear you. Don't be doing this. No one can hear you then. And we will sanitize the microphone between speakers. And with that now, Judy McCoy Davis.
Feel lucky today. Well, you should all feel lucky because we're all lucky to have Helen as a member of our club. We were kind of chuckling here because this is a new member introduction, but she's been a member for about 2 years. In 2019, we tried to get together to do this introduction, and she and I would have a hard time getting our schedules together, and something would come up, and eventually we had it all set to do, and then COVID hit. So we're a little late in doing this, but we want to welcome her to the club. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. I first got to meet Helen 20 years ago. It's hard to believe, but she and I met in September when we both got involved in a Leadership Iowa class. And we spent 2 days a month together for the next 9 months. And over that period, I got to know Helen very well and got to realize how lucky we were to have Helen in Iowa. And I'll come back to that day and that part in a bit, but let me tell you some of the things I learned then. Helen is an extremely accomplished woman. She has her BA from Howard University in Business Administration. She has an MS in Library Sciences from, I always have to look at this one, Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. And she has her law degree from Georgetown University. Now, one of the things I learned about Helen in that period is not only was she highly educated, but I like to say, like me, we picked great husbands. And she picked a wonderful one in Ed. And Ed, like her, very well educated. He had his BA and MA from Howard in physics. Then he went on to join the Air Force and become a doctor. And he served as a colonel in the U.S. Army before in the Air Force. He was in the Air Force for 30 years before he retired. Now, once they retired, and this is what I found so amazing with Helen when I met her as part of the leadership class, was they looked over the entire country to decide where did they want to live, where did they want to be, and they chose Iowa. How fortunate for us that that's the choice they made. They moved to Fort Dodge, and that's where Ed later continued practice there. And Helen, after being in Leadership Iowa, as we ended the session in early June, she announced to us that she was going to run for the legislature. And I spent that summer door knocking with Helen in a district in Fort Dodge. She went on to win that election and win it 8 more times. She served in the legislature for 16 years, representing Fort Dodge. And during that time, after Ed died, she has 3 children, 2 of them who live outside of Iowa. One came here with Iowa, and fortunately, we got to have her stay. And I don't know if Erica is here today, but our own Erica Axiotis is the sister-in-law to Helen's daughter, Brooke. And so Brooke is an attorney here in Des Moines, and having Brooke here, I think, had a lot to draw Helen from Fort Dodge down to Des Moines. So Helen was familiar with Rotary. She'd been a member of the Rotary Club in Fort Dodge, and we're lucky to have her come and join us here. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the awards Helen has gotten, because as I said, she's been very involved in so many things. She's received the National Black Caucus of State Legislators Lifetime Achievement Award, the Herbert Hoover Uncommon Public Service Award, Polk County Women's Bar of Association Willie Stevenson Glanton Award. She was inducted into the Iowa African American Hall of Fame in 2012 and was inducted into the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame in 2020. And those are just a few of the awards she's received. For those of you involved in the arts, I'll mention this one little thing. That when I first met her, one of the things she did was a youth and arts program in Fort Dodge. And I remember the Artful Dodger program that she started there, coming to a community and seeing a need. So it gives you a sense of her. Our governor saw a need as well, and in 2019, appointed Helen to be the chair of the Iowa Patrol Board. And that is what brings her here to speak today. So welcome, Helen, as a member and as the head of the Parole Board. Patrol.
Good afternoon. After that introduction, I'm not so sure that anything that I have to say will be reflective of what you must all expect of me about now. So I just want you to know that I am going to do my absolute best. I'm Helen Miller. I'm the chair of the Iowa Board of Parole, a position to which I was appointed by Governor Kim Reynolds back in July of 2019. I must say that I had just retired from the legislature 2018, and I was having great fun hanging out with my grandson here in Des Moines and was not at all interested in going to work. So the governor had folks call me 3 times. And then finally, the 4th call, the governor decided she needed to get on the phone herself. And there was just something in her voice, because I've known her when she was in the Senate and when she was lieutenant governor. I just thought, well, hell, they need me, so let me just go on over here and see what I can do. I'm not known for my modesty, am I, Judy? I am really a modest person and shy too, believe it or not. But let me get on with it. Let me first of all say about the parole board, I didn't know much about it except what they basically do. And I'm sure most of you know nothing about it. How many of you know anything about the parole board? Uh-oh. Oh, uh-oh. I'm in trouble now. Well, one thing I think we can all agree is that it is a very small agency, but it is a mighty agency. It has, our board consists of 5 members. 2 of us are considered staff as well as members of the board, and that's myself and my vice chair. Then we have 3 what we call part-time board members who come in on a per diem basis. And then we have 3 alternates who serve in the event that one of the regular members cannot come in. I also have a requirement that alternates come in at least twice a month because when I got there, I kind of realized that we had alternates who might get called in to serve on a board, but who had never served on a board before and didn't know anything about it. So now they're required to come in twice a month so that they can learn the process, be aware, and so that they could keep up with what's going on. Pursuant to Section 904A of the Iowa Code, the composition of the board is required to have at least 1 attorney, a disinterested layperson, and a person with a master's degree in social work or who has knowledge of the criminal justice system. And then the other members are just, we operate year-round. People really don't understand that we meet 47 weeks out of the year. So we are not one of those part-time, show up once a month kind of boards. Our board members are committed to come in 3 days a week. The system that I put in place, because what happens is we had board members who would need a vacation, need to go to a doctor, do this or do that. We need to have some regularity in our duties there. And so one thing I've done is board members, we have a rotating kind of a system where board members come in for at least 3 weeks out of each month, but they rotate. So everybody knows on the 4th, there's a 4th week in that month that they won't have to show up. And they can schedule any vacation they want or doctors or dentist appointments or whatever. And that's worked really, really well. Each one of our panels is made up of 3 board members. But if we're doing commutations, we will, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because not everybody understands what happens with clemencies. If we have one of those board meetings, we require that there be 5 board members present to hear that interview. Our mission is, and I quote, to enhance overall public safety by making evidence-based and informed parole decisions for the successful reentry of offenders into the community to become productive and responsible citizens. We carry out our mission within the established guidelines of the Iowa Code. It remains consistent, however, with the manner in which things are evolving. Even though we want to make sure that that's what we do, we recognize that criminal law, criminal concerns are constantly evolving and changes, as we've witnessed particularly maybe in the last year or so. And so it's in the code that we have a mandate to make sure that we stay abreast of what is happening. We make quasi-judicial decisions. I'm going to explain, I hope I'm able to explain to you all today exactly how we do this. First of all, let me give you a brief overview of our agency. It was established in 1907 by the 37th General Assembly of the Iowa Legislature. As I told you, we have two full-time board members, myself and my vice chair. The other three are part-time, and then we have 3 alternates. We are all appointed by the governor and must undergo approval by the Senate, who get to vote us up or down. We have to be gender balanced, and we have to be party balanced. The board reports directly to the governor, so I don't have a boss other than the governor. And basically, the other members of the board, I'm not their boss, even though I am the chair. But the way that if there are problems that arise or whatever, or something that I think needs to be looked at, I can always go to the governor and suggest, or they could also go to the governor and say, we don't think Helen Miller's doing her job. And so it's a very direct relationship. The way that we achieve our mission, which is enhancing the overall public safety of our community, we review and interview offenders for parole or work release consideration by following the Iowa Code and any administrative rules that are out there. So we don't get to just sit down and, I think he should go, I think she should go. No. There's basically like a checklist that's laid out in the Iowa Code. And so a lot of times people just think you just sit down and you just make a decision. No, it's not that simple. You're looking for certain things. And we're always mindful that there is a public interest in all of this, and that, of course, we have finite resources to do anything that we want to do. We gather and review information regarding new parole and work release programs. We try to stay on top of what's happening around the country and even in the world, and bring it home if it warrants us engaging it in what we do at our board. We utilize evidence-based practices to perform risk assessments and promote supervised release at the appropriate time and at the appropriate level. We work to enhance a collaborative working relationship with all stakeholders in the criminal justice system by providing technical assistance, information, counseling, and helping wherever we can. One part of our job that people don't realize that we do is that even though the governor makes the decision to pardon someone, we make the decision to parole or revoke parole. But the governor makes the decision if you're going to pardon anybody, if you're going to commute a sentence, if you're going to restore the rights to not vote, we don't get into that, but the right to own a firearm, all that. The governor makes those decisions. But she does that based upon what my staff does. And what my staff does is it reviews the applications that these individuals submit when they're asking for these changes. And then we make a recommendation. Our board, 3 of us have to review it and vote on it. And then we make the recommendation to the governor as to what to do. I mentioned the many factors that we consider, and I want to just mention some of those so that people understand what's going on. In making that decision, we look at the criminal record, the nature and circumstances of the offense, recidivism, if they repeat it, propensity for violence, participation and completion of programs, either academic or vocational, that they've completed within the facility, psychological or psychiatric evaluations, how much time have they spent in the institution, has there been any institutional misconduct, have they been on supervision before, and was that successful or did they fail? Is there a history of drug abuse or alcohol abuse? Do they have a plan in place for what they're going to do when and if released? What is their general attitude and behavior in the facility? And what is their assessment for risk of violence if released? No one of these factors is looked at in a volume. Each eligible offender is reviewed at least once annually. We call it an annual review, so everyone comes up for review, but everyone may not have a review. In the event that perhaps someone has issues, let's say, been in fights, or their behavior is such that they should not be considered for review, and they have counselors, all the inmates have counselors, and they make a recommendation to the board as to whether or not an individual should be reviewed. And if we agree with that recommendation, then we don't review them. If we don't, then we bring them up for review anyway. The only people who are not eligible for this annual review are those who are serving a mandatory minimum or who are serving a life sentence. We consider our decision-making to be kind of smart. I don't know if other people would agree with that, but we do have a comprehensive and efficient way of looking at everything that they have done. Some of you may be familiar with some of that, I'm not sure, but our efforts are focused on their release and what it would take for them to be released successfully. We also engage with, in addition to evidence-based practices, we look at revocation conditions, involvement of the victim's opinions, just everything. It's a very, you wouldn't believe that we probably do somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I think this year, let's see, last year, 13,992 of these hearings were held. And so when it's amazing when people consider, we come in, we work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That's when the board is there. And literally you're there, you come in at 9 o'clock, and I was there yesterday morning doing commutation hearings. You just sit there, you get a little break to go to the bathroom, you may or may not get a break for lunch, but that board really, 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 really works. We use the ICON system, which is the Iowa Corrections Offender Network. And without that, I don't know if we could do the job that we do. This is what's called a board docket. And this is a very, very important document, because how do we get to go through so many cases so quickly? All of this is online. All of this information is in what's called the Board of Parole docket. It has the name of the individual, the age, what the offense is, the term of his sentence, how much of his sentence has been served, whether or not he owes restitution, is there a victim, so that we can address that, what our risk assessment says his propensity for violence is, what his education is, what his level of IQ is, does he have a release plan that's been worked out in terms of where he's going to go, what he did is a summary of what actually happened with his offense. So all of this is just in one document. And then, of course, there may be letters and from individuals, the victims. A hearing, let me just walk you through one of those. It was very disturbing to me the first time I ever walked into the hearing room, my very first day as a member of the board. They were a little bit short-handed, and they were really desperate to get me. First day I got there, I sat down, and they really just, okay, let's go. I looked around at the chairs, and all the chairs, there were these boxes of tissues. And I was like, okay, this is very strange. Why are these tissues? But then I realized, because nobody tells you what happens before you get there. You kind of figure it out as you go. So I got in there, and I realized that the victims are actually allowed to come into the boardroom. And they sit there, and they can make a statement. Those who support the offender, there is a room down the hall, a conference room with a TV, and they can actually see and hear our proceedings. But the victims themselves are actually in the room. That's the way it was. Because of COVID, of course, we've had to change that. so that what we do now is we use, I think currently we're using Google Hangouts. We might have to go to another system if Department of Corrections is suggesting another system. The victim gets an opportunity to interview the individual. I don't know if you're aware, but victims are very, very important, and are their opinions, thoughts, feelings are taken very, very seriously. The board recognizes that they occupy a special place as unwilling participants in what is going on. They don't really want to be there, but they can provide crucial insight into the crimes that have been committed against them and about the individuals who committed them. And the board really needs to consider that. So we have in code, we're required to notify the victims of a hearing at least 20 days in advance. And of course, this sets off all kinds of bells and whistles because you've been the victim of a horrendous crime and your offender potentially may be released. I mean, wow, it's difficult because you'll have folks calling and crying and they don't want to come, and how can you possibly consider a person for release? And it's like, it's in the code. It isn't my personal decision to release or bring this person up for an interview, but it's the job that we have to do. And so there are a lot of tiers, but we do make sure that even in COVID times, we have access for our victims to be on the line. They can make a statement if they wish to. They can be seen if they want to be seen. They don't have to. They can just sit there and listen. It's up to them. Last year, we had, by the end of the year, we had 6,573 registered victims. In addition to paroling individuals, the other thing we do is we revoke. We have two, I should have told you about our staff. I told you about the board. So I'm the chair, so I'm a staff member, and my vice chair is a staff member. We have an administrative secretary, and we have two parole liaison officers, we call them. One handles the hearings, one handles all matters related to the victims and to clemencies, and the other one kind of does a general job. We also have two staff that are administrative law judges. And what they do is they handle all parole revocations. If there's a recommendation, and it would come from out there in the field with a parole officer, that an individual should have his parole revoked, they get a hearing, and these hearings happen virtually now before our administrative law judges. Last year, there were 3,350 or 3,350 revocation hearings. Some folks are automatically revoked in the event that they are on parole and they've done something or charged with something horrendous. It just depends upon. But if it's a technical violation, maybe he didn't show up at a certain time or something like that, they may not be revoked immediately. But the whole process begins when we here in our office, our parole office, ALJs, when they actually receive a copy from the parole officer, a violation report. And then we notify the violator, and they schedule a revocation hearing. And he or she, we have two, will determine whether or not that person's parole will be changed in any way. It can be reinstated with credit for jail time served if they're in prison for a part of this. They can reinstate the parole with additional conditions. They can divert to an appropriate program. They can be released to a work release program, or they can just be revoked and sent directly to prison. I'm going to wind this down very, very quickly because there's one thing that I want to tell you that I think is really, really important, and then I'll be done. Okay. This very, very important thing has to do with clemency. You hear a lot of talk about clemencies, especially in light of what's happening with COVID and everybody wanting everybody out of prison. Okay, it's in the code section 914.3. It gives the governor the power, not the Board of Parole, the power to commute a sentence, to pardon someone, or to restore rights. The process, we handle the process. The applications are actually sent to us at the Board of Parole, and the applicant must have in his packet that he submits evidence that he will continue to be a law-abiding citizen or will be a law-abiding citizen. We had to investigate, and that's what our parole liaison officer who oversees clemency does. We had to investigate everything that's in that application that he sends or she sends, and then we have to, 3 of us board members have to actually sit down and look this over and vote, yes, we think that the governor should deny it, or yes, no, we think the governor should. You know what I'm saying? Yes or no, I'm trying to rush here. Yes or no, and then if we recommend that the person be granted, it's sent over to the governor's office, and she has 90 days to make her decision as to whether or not she's going to grant parole or probation. Okay, I kind of rushed through that, I'm sorry. Were there any questions? Do we have time for a question, do you think?
I'm Carl Schilling. I'm with the Iowa Organization for Victim Assistance. And let me say right off, we like you.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
But one concern that we had during the whole issue of paroles for juvenile offenders who committed murder and were sentenced to life without parole. Now, of course, they're entitled to parole. Now, does that mean that the families are going to have to be there every couple of years for a hearing, or is there a review process to decide whether or not to have a hearing?
No, juvenile lifers are a completely different category. Are you talking about the families of the victims, or? No, there's no requirement that the family be there. If they don't want to be there, they don't have to be. If they don't want to make a statement, they don't have to. A lot of times we by law are required to notify them at least 20 days in advance of a hearing, so that if they want to come, if they want to participate, then they can. But they're not required to be there.
Sorry, yeah, I realize that, but you know, the issue will come up every time.
I know.
Okay. And so can this currently be handled by a review before there's a hearing to decide if there'll be an actual hearing, or are the hearings going to be automatic every couple of years?
They're going to be pretty much automatic. In juvenile lifer situations, that one is still evolving. I think there may be something like about 19 or 20 juvenile lifers left in the system right now. And as a matter of fact, there's some court cases pending where some of these issues are being addressed. This is one of those areas that's constantly evolving. So I can't tell you for sure what's going to happen. And there really isn't any code specificity to tell you what to do with that. But it's kind of being evolved by judicial precedent.
Okay. Yeah, I've been to some parole hearings, and you have a very tough job.
It is a very tough job. Thank you.
Kurt Johnson, you mentioned that if people are sentenced to a mandatory minimum, that they're not eligible for parole. When they get to the end of that mandatory minimum, are they just released, or is there a parole issue then?
No, they are released.
They are released. Do you have any observations on mandatory minimums? I mean, I know that's sort of a political question, but maybe it's not part of what you have to think about.
It's really not a part of what we have to think about. A lot of folks want to ascribe to the board discretion. And we kind of sort of, if you think about us, I think more like a jury. There are instructions and you're to follow them. And that's basically what we do. We don't, there's not a lot of independence in that. It's code and administrative rules specific. Oh, Hal?
Hello, Helen. Good to see you.
Good to see
Glad
you
you're
too.
here. I wanted to ask, when I taught at Ball State University, and it was in the late 70s and all of the 80s, inside there are maximum security prisons, and I was asked to teach African American history, both in the men's prison and the women's prison. And those people could earn a bachelor's degree. To my knowledge, there's nothing like that in the state of Iowa. And what little I know about recidivism, if somebody has a degree, let me add, an associate's degree from community college or a degree from a university, they are far get back in prison. So it's really a pitch. If we don't have that, and clearly I believe you probably have the governor's ear, that's at least, it seems to me, a valid idea. And hope you approach that with our current governor.
There is happening within the community college system efforts to bring education in this effort. Iowa Central Community That is an effort that they are making in order to try and bring that's actually been something that's been brought up at the national level. I think let me just say this very briefly. There were a number of programs. I had on the conferences, there were a number of things that were going on across the country with this criminal justice reform. And then COVID hit. And so that put the kibosh on everything. Rabina Institute, I could have told you about a number of programs, but everything's kind of been delayed because of COVID. And so as we come out of COVID, I'm expecting those efforts to pick up. I thank you all so much for bearing with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Helen, for sharing your story with us today, and for being part of our Rotary Club of Des Moines and all that you do for the community and our state of Iowa. Hearing her speak and then thought back to all the awards she's gotten over her life. How did I get to be a Rotarian president? And even more importantly, how did I even get in this club when we've got members like her? Wow. We're glad to have you, Helen. And we're donating the book From Raindrop to Tap to the Downtown School Library in your honor. And I know you're putting some words of wisdom in there to our young readers. Thank you for that. Thank you all for being here with us today, whether in person or on our YouTube channel. And I really shouldn't have been harassing David Goldman, as he did me a great favor while I was recovering from surgery. As he mentioned, we are next door neighbors, and before surgery, he told me not to be afraid to ask for any help. Well, one morning, my wife left for work before I got dressed, and I couldn't get a sock on my surgery leg. So I thought, okay, I'll text David. Yeah, he came right over and helped me out. Now, how many people can say that they have had the former governor's chief of staff for not one, but two governors help them put a sock on your foot? I think I'm one of the few. May not be worthy of Rotarian of the Year, but I was very grateful for the help. Thank you, David, for being a great neighbor. Yeah. Oh, that's a bad joke. Did he sock it to me? Oh. All right. Upcoming speakers. Next week, June 3rd, the Principal Charity Golf Classic will be taking place here at Wakanda, so we will not be meeting here at noon. We do, though, however, have a fellowship social event planned from 4:30 to 6 at Birdland Park, in Darling Shelter, on Thursday, June 3rd. Please bring your own picnic foods. We're not going to be serving. You can bring adult beverages, but it has to be canned beer. Spouses, partners, and kids are welcome to attend. Bring a prospective member if you'd like. And there is no charge to attend. There is a shelter house there, so rain or shine, we will have the event. June 10th, A.J. Mumm, Polk County Emergency Management Commission. And on June 17th, Billy Hunt, Cultivation Corridor. Hard to believe I only have 5 more meetings as your Rotary president. A little bit of applause there. All right. Thank you for being with us here in person today, watching our live stream or later on our YouTube channel. And think about bringing a prospective member to share Rotary with someone today. Please recall that this upcoming Memorial Day, which just happens to be my favorite holiday of the year, and I'm not making that up, it truly is more than just the start of the grilling season. It is a time when we remember those men and women who served in the military. We decorate their graves, and we're thankful for the many that have given the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our freedoms. Also remember those that served, that were able to come home, work their jobs, raised a family, and didn't seek any glory for it. These are great Americans that truly left something behind. With that, we are adjourned.